Welcome to the deep dive. So you've shared some pretty alarming information about what's happening with the Iranian Real. We wanted to really dig into this, understand the core issues, and maybe more importantly, what it actually feels like for people living through it in Iran.
Exactly. It's a significant situation. The material you sent, especially that Helloan TV article, really highlights a dramatic devaluation.
Dramatic is maybe an understatement.
Well, yeah, they point out nearly a 50% loss in the real's value against the US dollar.
50%.
In how long?
Just the last 6 months. It's
Yeah.
pretty stark.
Right.
The article gives the numbers. 6 months ago, one US dollar was about, say, 60,000 derailment.
Okay.
Now, it's fetching 100,000 derailment.
Wow. All right.
So yeah, their article calls it a silent earthquake. I think that description really captures the magnitude of the shock to the economy, even if it's not, a physical event.
A silent earthquake. That makes sense because, well, the ground isn't shaking, but people's financial stability definitely is. The article had that example, didn't it? About savings. Yes, the $10,000 example, it's quite illustrative.
Right. So if you had the equivalent of 10 grand US in your real account 6 months back,
Uh-huh.
that same pile of reals is now only worth about $5,000.
Exactly. You've essentially lost half your wealth, measured in dollar terms, without, buying anything.
Just vanished.
Pretty much. It shows just how fast this devaluation hits people's savings, their purchasing power. Because, think about it. If the real buys fewer dollars, businesses have to spend way more reals for imported goods.
Which they then pass on to consumers, obviously.
It's naturally, yeah. So it just changes the whole financial landscape very, very quickly.
And you mentioned the article had a chart. This isn't just a 6-month blip, is it?
No, that's a really crucial point. This weakening isn't new. The chart they included shows this pretty steady slide going back quite a way to around 2017.
Okay, so what was it like back then?
Back then, you were looking at maybe 4,000 tas into the dollar, roughly.
4,000 compared to over 100,000 now.
Yep, over 100,000 now. So it really paints a picture of a chronic issue, a persistent instability.
So this latest plunge is more like an acceleration of something already happening.
Precisely. An acceleration of a really worrying trend. And the article probably touches on this too, but international sanctions have played a big role in this long-term decline.
Right. Limiting access to foreign currency, trade. Makes sense.
Yeah, it puts immense pressure on the economy and the currency.
Okay, so we've got scale, the history.
Yeah.
This long decline.
Yeah.
Now sharply accelerating. Let's talk about the impact, the day-to-day stuff.
Right, because that's where it really hits home. The consequences are, they're everywhere. As the real falls, anything imported gets more expensive. And that includes a lot of basic necessities.
Like food, rent.
Food, rent, healthcare, education. The article mentions prices are going up almost daily for some of these things.
Daily. And I guess the huge problem is that people's incomes aren't going up daily. They're earning in real deals, right?
Exactly right. Incomes are stagnant, or certainly not keeping pace, while the cost of living is just soaring. It leads to this rapid impoverishment. People's real buying power just evaporates.
So it becomes less about planning for the future and more about
just getting through today, yeah. The article highlights that shift from future planning to daily survival for many people. It's a constant struggle.
There was that specific example about rice, wasn't there?
Yes, the Iranian rice example. Yeah. Very telling.
What was it? The price doubled.
Doubled in 1 year. From about 100,000 to Norman per kilogram in, say, 2024 to 200,000 to Norman in 2025.
For rice, a basic staple.
Yeah.
Doubling in a year. That really shows how bad the inflation bite is.
It really does. And imagine the choices that forces families to make, affecting nutrition, basic well-being. It's tough.
So how are people coping? The article mentions some strategies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Trying to protect themselves somehow.
Yeah, people aren't passive. They try to find ways. Faced with this kind of devaluation, the natural instinct is to find something more stable. So the article mentions people trying to buy US dollars if they can, or gold.
Trying to hold on to some value outside the treadle.
Exactly. Assets that are seen as, safer havens in unstable times.
And also stockpiling. Buying goods now because they expect prices to go even higher.
That's another reaction, yeah. If you think things will cost more tomorrow, it seems logical to buy today if you have the means. But of course, that kind of behavior, while understandable individually, can sometimes make shortages worse or even fuel more inflation down the line.
It sounds incredibly stressful. The article mentioned the human cost the fear, the uncertainty.
Oh, absolutely. It's immense. More than just the financial numbers. Think about the constant worry. Are my savings safe? Can I afford food next week? Can I afford medicine? That lack of certainty, that feeling of being trapped,
Mm.
it takes a huge emotional toll.
Yeah, constant sense of insecurity.
Pervasive insecurity, yeah.
Yeah.
Affects mental health, social stability, everything.
And the article even drew a comparison with Venezuela, didn't it?
It did, comparing it to Venezuela's hyperinflation.
Which really underscores just how serious the situation is perceived to be.
Right. It's a stark warning, really, a reminder of where things could potentially head if this spiral isn't controlled. The consequences of full-blown hyperinflation are just devastating.
Towards the end, the Hello TV piece, Sarah's question really stood out to me.
Which one was that?
She asks, have you felt the impact of this currency crash? How are people around you coping?
Yes. That's a powerful way to end.
It really brings it back from the economic charts to the human reality, doesn't it?
It really does. It forces you to think about the lived experience behind the statistics. The actual people, the families, the communities affected by these huge financial shifts.
Yeah. So as we wrap up this deep dive, it really makes you reflect, how these abstract things like exchange rates and inflation figures, how they have such incredibly real, tangible effects on individual lives, on the whole fabric of a society.
Yeah, absolutely. It pushes you to look beyond the numbers.
So maybe a final thought for everyone listening is just that. Considering how these financial headlines translate into human stories, maybe thinking about vulnerability, how people cope, have you felt ripples of something like this or seen others navigate it? It's definitely something worth pondering in our interconnected world.